Dr. Satan, the world's weirdest criminal. Written by Paul Ernst, told to you by Edward E.French. Episode 4, Satan's Trap. In front of a triple mirror before which was a bench holding hundreds of tiny pots and jars, Ascott Keane worked deftly. His fingers flew from jar to features, pot to face, and as they flew his face subtly altered. Already it was no longer the face of Keane. It was a countenance which to Beatrice Dale was vaguely familiar, though she could not yet name it. "That hideous death shrub," she said. "I can't yet see how it is used by Dr. Satan." "You've seen Indian fakirs make a tree grow in a pot, haven't you?" said Keane. "Usually it's a miniature orange tree. They make it grow before your eyes and pick an orange from it. Well, Dr. Satan's wizardry is something like that, only he utilizes a form of thorn bush that flowers in human substance instead of earth. He reshaped his lips with a collodion-like red lacquer, and the girl cried aloud. Keane's face was that of Wolstead. Line for line, it was Wolstead's slightly puffy countenance that was reflected in the mirror. A close friend of the dead millionaire would have been deceived. "What are you planning to do, Ascott?" asked Beatrice. Keane began pinning thin pads to the lining of his coat to give his lean, strong body the bulk of Wolstead's puffy body. Dr. Satan said in his note to Wolstead to put the money in a trash can at Broadway and 76th Street. Very well, I'm going to take Wolstead's place. Made up as him, I'll drop a package in that can and wait to see who picks it up. Beatrice shook her beautiful coppery brown head. "Wolstead's death isn't out in the papers yet, but surely Dr. Satan must know the man is dead. Or are you hoping to fool him?" "Dr. Satan," said Keane dryly, "hardly has to wait to get his information from the newspapers." "Then he'll know that the man who looks like Wolstead and who drops the package in the trash can can't possibly be Wolstead." "That's right," said Keane, drawing on the padded coat and scrutinizing himself in the triple mirrors. "But he'll guess it's you, and he'll most certainly try to kill you." "That's what I'm hoping," said Keane, putting on a hat of the type worn by Wolstead. "But Ascott—" "It's like this," said Keane. "Dr. Satan hasn't met me yet. I think he'll underestimate me, so I'm rather stupidly disguising myself as Wolstead and going to the place where Wolstead was to have gone in the hope that Dr. Satan will trap me. In that event," his jaw squared, "I think he'll be sorry." He stepped away from the mirrors, and it was not Keane who moved. It was Wolstead. In an antique Italian cabinet, there was an extra wide drawer. Keane pulled this out. In it was a rolled papyrus that closely resembled the papyrus that had been spread wide in Dr. Satan's black room. Beside the papyrus was a little stone jar. Keane opened the jar and took from it a bit of greenish paste, which he touched to his forehead, the soles of his shoes, and the palms of his hands. "Marvelous beings, the ancient Egyptians," he said softly. "I recognized the blue fire that burned my chair and would have consumed me if I'd been in it. The fire burned in many a temple along the Nile. But what the Egyptian wizards concocted they usually made fruitless by further research." Beatrice caught his arm, her eyes fearful. Keane pressed her hand. "Don't worry about me, my dear. I'll be back soon, and I think I'll be back with news that this Dr. Satan, new peril to a city as yet ignorant of his existence, has passed on to the hell he should have been sent to long ago." He walked to the door, moving as Wolstead had moved. His eyes met the girl's deep blue ones. Then he was gone, to be trapped by the creature who had brought to a new science of criminology all the knowledge of ancient magic and modern research. 9 o'clock, Upper Broadway was crowded with night shoppers and moviegoers. Among the crowds near 76th Street moved a tall, slightly paunchy man who kept his face shadowed by the brim of his hat, a face that many in the city would have sworn was that of a ghost. Of the dead Wolstead. On the northeast corner of Broadway and 76th, the trash can showed. The man disguised as Wolstead crossed to the can. Under his arm was a small parcel done up in a newspaper. He dropped the parcel in the can and walked on. Without a backward glance, he rounded the next corner. But once around the corner, Keane stopped and went back, moving like a shadow. He peered through the double angle of a Comer plate glass window at the trash can, and he saw a sinister miracle. The can was of wire, with interstices in its walls through which the contents could be seen. When Keane had tossed the package into it, the can had been half full of refuse. Now the old papers and odds and ends of trash seemed to be melting away, like water draining down through a hole. Lower and lower the contents sank, till finally the can was empty. Keane shook his head a little, eyes gleaming like ice. Transmission of substance through empty air, he breathed. One of the secrets of nature no man is supposed to have unlocked. You're a terrible adversary, Dr. Satan. None in the crowd so close to the can had noted the way the refuse slowly disappeared from within it, but Keane had caught it all. Moreover, he had seen that the trash had disappeared from the north side of the can, as though it were flowing in that direction, melting into thin air as it flowed. The north side of the can, toward him. Keane slunk into a doorway. His quick eyes roved over the Broadway crowd, and in a moment they rested on a figure that tensed his body as a hound's body is tensed at the scent of a fox. A tall, shambling man across the street from the trash container was walking slowly toward the 72nd Street subway entrance. Under his arm was held a parcel done up in a newspaper. Keane's lips thinned. Dr. Satan was making sure he saw the parcel and followed the carrier. He stepped unobtrusively from the doorway and into the Broadway crowds, where he followed the tall, shambling figure to the subway entrance. Was the tall figure that of Dr. Satan himself, or was it one of his helpers? Keane did not know, but he did know that he would have shot the man down in cold blood on the chance that a diabolical career would have been nipped in the bud had he not been fully aware that no weapon as crude as an automatic could prevail over an opponent like Dr. Satan. The figure got off the subway at Greenwich Village Station. Keane followed a block behind. His body was taut as a stretched tendon. He knew he was to be trapped, to be brought to a carefully devised death. He knew that Dr. Satan had for the moment dropped all other plans to concentrate on removing him so that he could follow his criminal career unhampered. Could he stay unharmed in that trap till he had overcome the man? Was his intellect the equal of that which could cause solid matter to dissolve and reappear in another spot? He was prepared for violence as he walked along the dark village street after the tall figure. He was ready for anything, from a bullet or a knife in the dark to an attack, an abduction by masked men springing on him from dark alleyways. But he was not prepared for the thing that actually did happen. At one moment he was following the tall figure. At the next, the figure ahead had disappeared. And Keane was still moving forward, though he had willed his body to halt while he gazed around to see where the figure could have gone to. Moving forward, against his will, against the conscious command of his brain. Keane strove to stop, to walk to right or left. He could not. His muscles were driven by another's will. And now another thing happened, a thing even more frightening. He began to lose his sight. The dark street, the partly lighted buildings lining it, the sidewalk before him, all slowly faded from his sight. But his body kept moving slowly, surely forward. In a moment he was blind. He could see not one thing. But his feet seemed able to see. They bore him on without a stumble, raising for curbs, lowering him for gutters. Thus, with no man forcing him, apparently, blindfolded as surely as if thick cloths were tied over his eyes, Keane moved to the will of Dr. Satan toward the trap. He felt himself turn. Under his hand was an iron railing. He felt himself going down steps. A door creaked open in front of him. He walked on, totally blind, and heard the soft creak and a slam behind him. More stairs downward. Hands outstretched, scrape along the moist walls of a passage like a low tunnel. Steps again. A clang over his head as though a stone trapdoor had been battened down above him. Finally, a swish of drapes and a harsh, monotoned voice that made every nerve in his body twitch. No need to speculate on the ownership of that voice. Its vibrant arrogance and deadly coldness told him. It was the voice of Dr. Satan himself. And he was in the grim masquerader's hidden headquarters. That concludes tonight's exciting episode of Dr. Satan, the world's weirdest criminal. Tune in again next time for Episode 5, The Two Titans. Dr. Satan is a copyright feature of Edward E. French, all rights reserved. Inquiries should be addressed to Edward French at email, edwardfrench06@hotmail.com. That's edwardfrench06@hotmail.com. Subscribe, won't you, to the Fiction Fantastique channel. That's www.youtube.com/FrenchEdward06. Good night.